What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. The estimable Phil Perry will join in just 1 second. A lot to kick through as the Patriots chart a course for 2023. And, we'll see what this week brings. But I feel like what the Patriots did last week was a positive. And it was necessary. And you're saying, okay, fella, it's a 2-sentence statement. They're going to chase an offensive coordinator. Everybody knew they needed to do that, and they're going to re-up with Mayo, hopefully. What's the big deal? Easy with the sheet cake. Put away the confetti cannons. There's more to it than that after conversations with folks behind the scenes, extensive conversations, I might add. Here's what I'm feeling. One, the best part, no discord with Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft in their meeting. We went over that, but it still needs to be circled back to and underlined. There was an understanding that 2022 coaching setup was a misstep. And really, some of the symptoms and pre-indicators that lead to Bill thinking that was a good idea, I think that they are now being acknowledged more readily. And there's willingness to change, which was exhibited when you put out a statement. Old school Bill's not putting out that statement, nor allowing it. He's putting his big foot down, big Croatian foot down, saying, no, not doing it. We're not putting out statements. Well, it's the way business is actually kind of done, as in the way business is done around the NFL, is you name coordinators, you have titles, you make guys feel secure in their jobs. You understand that the buck does stop with some of the lieutenants and not just the general. So it's important to give a title here and there. Now, Bill, I think, got under the impression, understandably so, that all this super secret machinations, all this clandestine stuff with titles and who's in charge of what and keeping people in the dark was to the good. That helped. They won football games. That's what was good for the football team. That stuff ran sidecar. It was a fringe aspect of what really was going on, which was the greatest player to ever play the position, some really good players that the Patriots either drafted or brought in as undrafted guys and developed, and great coaching. All this other crap, not revealing injuries, not giving out titles, being a collection of shrugs, throat clears, and lip smacks at a press conference. That doesn't help you win games. All the other stuff did. And you know what? All that clandestine stuff, it really alienated some employees over time. Josh McDaniels, for instance, not knowing whether to stick with the Patriots or move on to Indianapolis in 2017, and then hurting his brand by backing out of that situation with the Indianapolis Colts, all because he was not communicated with. So being a little more open is better. And that's what we saw with the announcement that Jerod Mayo is in negotiations. The Patriots are saying, hey, tired of the brain drain. Make sure the guys that you don't want to leave know that their services are particularly valued. Just let them hit the market and then we'll reel them back in. Stuff that the Patriots did with players for so long and maybe with coaches to an extent too. That only works when the workplace that you're in is exceedingly desirable to stay with. And the Patriots have not been that. Is Bill just going along to get along? Maybe. We'll see in March when we see him at the owners' meetings. We don't need him to lie prostrate on the ground, flog himself, or prostrate. I'm never sure on those two. Vulnerable, akimbo, on the ground and flog himself. Just don't act like it's dental surgery when people pose questions about the team trying to get back to good. Don't do the passive-aggressive stance that announces, yeah, I'm only doing this because I was told to. So let's get to the pod. One before I bring in Phil. I reported that Bill O'Brien is the primary target here. No surprise in that. O'Brien's reported interest in returning to the NFL was well established. The Kraft's reported interest in past years in O'Brien, well established. How well O'Brien fits the profile of what the Patriots need, what Mac Jones will be comfortable with, pretty well established. More than anything, here was Bill in September of 2016. Belichick, before the Patriots played the Houston Texans. I think the world of Bill. He did a tremendous job for me here. I can't say enough about really everything with Bill. His personal qualities, how committed he is to his family, how committed he was to the football team, how hard he worked. He had a lot of passion and energy, and that was very well received. And he does an excellent job of coaching. Further elaborating on why he was so impressed with O'Brien's coaching style in their time together. Tough, aggressive, hard-nosed, but at the same time an excellent communicator, somebody that really understands and can talk to the players and can really push them, and then still be able to put his arm around them and kind of console them or give them that advice in a little bit of a different atmosphere, he said. Belichick did. He's excellent on game day, a very good decision maker and play caller, an excellent teacher and strategist, motivator. I learned an awful lot having him here. Phil, get in here. Phil, I need you. I mean, I'm glad I found that because we all knew it, right? But it's good affirmation. And welcome, my friend.
Thank you. And yes, affirmation. Those two guys, I think, have a great deal of respect for one another. And that should be near the top of the list for reasons why Bill O'Brien makes the most sense, right, Tom? He's not just going to go completely off the board. I don't think. He's gone off the board with hires in the past, hires to his coaching staff. It's not just like, with the draft or like Josh Boyer, right? Where did he come from? With the South Dakota School of Mining and Technology? Apologies if it's the North Dakota School of Mining and Technology. It's something along those lines.
I think it is the North.
Cam McCord was somebody who had sort of, met Joe Judge, I believe, and I did a story on this years ago now, but those guys sort of just ran into each other in passing and developed a relationship. And then all of a sudden, Cam McCord's on the Patriots staff. So he's
Mike Pellegrino, Laxbro.
Yes. So he's clearly gone off the board in the past in terms of like signing guys or hiring guys that we've never heard of before that he somehow has a relationship with because he's got relationships with a lot of people that we've never heard of before. But it would surprise me if this offensive coordinator hire was somebody we've never heard of before. It's such an important job, Tom, for him to go way off the board like that would just be surprising to me.
Especially after trying to do it in an unconventional way with just the stuff he has lying around in his garage works so poorly. And again, it's the relationships too. And, the Patriots are, for lack of a better word, too incestuous. They have a lot of maneuvering that goes on. Someone goes out, whether it be McDaniels, whether it be Joe Judge, whether it be Patricia, whether it be Bill O'Brien, if he does come back. Someone goes out, they eventually come back in. If they don't come back here, you're Brian Daboll, you're Bill O'Brien, you go to Alabama. I mean, there's a select pool of coaches that is going to always overlap to some extent, and you need guys to give an imprimatur or a recommendation as to who's going to be good. But when you're going to the titans of the industry, Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, and you understand that you can leverage that position that you've gotten into one of the golden tickets that can earn you a $15, $20, $30 million contract. That's what Cliff Kingsbury's contract was. That's even for a cheap-ass team like the Cardinals. Then there's going to be a lot of maneuvering to try and gain that generational wealth that comes with being a head coach. And one of the best ways to be a head coach is to work for Nick Saban or Bill Belichick. That's why guys will do it for free, which in essence is what Brett Bielema did, leverage that into another college gig, what Matt Patricia is doing, what Joe Judge is doing. That incestuousness, that clandestine crap, that not giving out titles leads to backbiting, maneuvering, and I'm going to say it again. I've been getting heckled on Twitter for it. Machiavellian bullshit. I can't stop saying the word. And they're all elbowing for Bill's favor. And you know what? If you don't have Bill's favor, you end up like Nick Caley, right, Phil? I mean, Nick Caley's going on interview for the Jets job. He would have been a better candidate than Patricia this year, but Bill was mad at him. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me, Phil.
It is, and I just wonder now if have we crossed a threshold into a new world? Do you think we're there yet? Do you think that now that the Patriots are releasing statements about hiring offensive coordinators and the fact that this is going to be an offensive coordinator and not an offensive assistant, not an offensive line coach who's going to be calling plays, not a quality control guy with a headset on game? This is a real job, and this is uncharted territory in terms of the Patriots divulging their offseason plans to us via press release, does that mean that that stuff is over now?
It didn't help them win games. None of the clandestine crap helps them win games. It's not what's good for the football team. Maybe not genuflecting at the altar of Nick Saban and saying, sorry, Nick, but what's best for my football team is to get Bill. And I know it's going to hose you a little bit here, but I'm gonna have to do it here. It's just what happens in big business. No, what was best for the football team was to get Bill O'Brien. What was best for the relationship with Nick Saban was to back off Bill O'Brien. That's what he did. So, yeah, they need to pivot. You don't want to be pissing people off, Nick Saban primarily. I'm just using that as a for instance. When Bill talks about what's best for the football team, there are so many things that enter into that. You can move the goalposts wherever you want to. And that's why I asked him about that at the end of the year. What's best for the football team can be what's best today or what's best in 20 years. What's best for the football team right now is much better dialogue so that the franchise, the brand, not the team, not the 53 guys, the brand can be seen as being on the right track back to where it's been, which is competency, because it was incompetency on the field last year. Phil, I'm babbling. I've had the ball a lot in this pod so far. Sorry.
That's okay. Yes. And what you're describing to me is when you go so far outside the box that you make a decision that ends up derailing your season in some ways, that's where ownership steps in. And that's what happened here and says, okay, time for us to get back in the box. For us to play inside the box. And that maybe it's not what every team would do, but a lot of teams, feel like they have to do this, and it's with good reason. It's because this is now what we need. When no matter what you do, you win games, you can say that's what's best for the organization, and you have the evidence that proves that. And so fine, do it that way. That's okay. Winning cures all. But if you're not, then we might have to get a little bit more conventional.
Yep.
And whether you like it or not. And so that's what ownership has done here, is it has taken the reins in some ways and said, nope, that way. And it's not as though Bill Belichick didn't, willingly hand over the reins, Tom. I think he probably knew that he had to in a certain way. He probably understood that they had to do things differently, and that ownership wants to do things a certain way because it hasn't gone so well of late. But that's what's going on. Is you want to get unconventional. You want to do. We talked about buy-in early in the season, Tom. And if you make a number of unconventional decisions and they don't go well, people start to look at you sideways. This is ownership starting to look at Bill Belichick sideways and saying, "Sorry, man, we got to do it differently." And I think he would have to shrug his shoulders and say, "I get it."
Yeah, and Phil did an excellent job on that, talking about that buy-in. I love covering this team because it's just such a treasure trove of overlapping things from the history. Phil talking to Bill a few years ago about trick plays, and Bill saying, even when the team was highly successful, I think it was 16, 17, or 18, hey, you can't keep going to the well on those things because if they don't work, people are going to look at you sideways and say, didn't we try this? What are we doing? That's when the Patriots were the capital letters Patriots, and Bill was already concerned about buy-in. You have to have buy-in at all times. And if you're losing it from your owners, because I love using the subway example because I do think of the NFL as 31 different subways, 32, all run differently. Well, this guy used to do huge sales, but then he hired a bunch of his buddies, and now they're not doing the numbers that they used to. Can we call this guy and get him back into the conventional? He was good, so we let him do it, but it's just not working. So, but that's the thing, is Bill is a proud guy and ought to be. He's got an ego. You don't get to where he is without one. He's sure of himself. He's forgotten more football than night's sleep than you and I will ever know, Phil. So that's why it's tender about trying to make him self-flagellate for our purposes. I mean, I don't want that. As much as people think I think he's a dink, and it bothers me that he's difficult to deal with at the podium, I got good history with the guy. I don't want to see him embarrassed. I don't want to see him go anywhere. So to me, there's a fine line you got to walk there too, right?
If you're ownership, meaning?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, let's not get to the point where we're embarrassing this person. No, even though he might have easy embarrassment levels.
Well, and I don't think they're there. I think that you give a person an entire season to do things a certain way, even when you go into that season telling media members, if you're Robert Kraft, it doesn't always look straight line to me either. But you give them the whole year to try to figure it out. They didn't step in at the bye week or even before that and say, guys, we're at the bottom of the league in a lot of offensive statistical categories here. Like, we can't keep doing this. I'm not wasting a year of my, CEO and chairmanship of this team at this stage of my life because you wanted to do this weird thing with he gave him the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
And then he released he made a press release, which, made its way past Bill Belichick's desk before it hit our inboxes. And so, he did Belichick sign off on the thing. And so I think that indicates a level of agreement, a level of not capitulation, but I know as well as anybody. He knows this team better than anybody does, Bill Belichick. He knows as well as anybody that it didn't go well and that things need to happen for it to change. So now this is the week, right? You at least start interviewing your offensive coordinator candidates and you go from there.
Yeah. I don't want to put a timeline on it. I was speaking to somebody who started to and then said, no timeline. All that said, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the week there's movement. Are the Patriots just a coordinator away? Are they just a Bill O'Brien away, Phil?
Away from what would be my question?
Well, there were a lot of there's a lot of football played this weekend that I think that media members, Zoe in particular, saying, "Man, you missed a shot here. Look at all this crap football. The Patriots could have been in here just like them and doing business." That wasn't true. The Patriots are a team that scored less than 2 touchdowns a game offensively. So that gets you to what? 12 offensive points, less than 2 touchdowns. They scored 31 touchdowns in 17 games with 32. So that's not getting you into a shootout with what we saw this past weekend. But bring in somebody who helps them score more offensive touchdowns, then you might have a conversation. Plus, the Patriots were just as stupid as every stupid team we saw out there this year. Just as stupid. Mike McDaniel, want to laugh at him for not getting plays in? At least he waited for the friggin' 19th week. He didn't do it in week 12 against Las Vegas. Sorry, don't get me going. I'm trying to be positive.
At least he waited until the 19th week is an interesting way of putting it.
Really
that would seem to me to be the last week you would want that sort of thing to happen.
It really is. That's the inverse.
Hey,
the Super Bowl. It's time for me to really f something up. I'm due.
Guys, I've been itching to bollock something up here.
So are the Patriots a coordinator away?
They're a coordinator away from the playoffs.
Are they a coordinator away
saying
from,
that.
Are they a coordinator away from having a higher offensive IQ that makes them stop eating paint chips?
Yes. Because it was largely the same team 1 year ago. And they weren't eating paint chips for the majority of 2021. And then they come back this year with one big change. And they look the way they look.
Paint chips all over the front of their shirt. When you walk in, you said you were just eating paint, weren't you?
Nope.
So, and if they are a coordinator away, how does that fix the offensive line, Hercules?
So they're a coordinator away from the playoffs. They're not really a coordinator away from contention. I think you still need an upgrade to your weaponry. You need an upgrade to the offensive line. You at least need one offensive line starter at tackle, which those guys aren't easy to find. So, no, you won't be able to fix your offensive line. But, Tom, good coordinators have the ability to hide their offensive lines in ways that number more than just screen pass A, screen pass B, screen pass C, which is what we saw from the Patriots this year. So there are different ways to work around that. There are many, many, many offensive lines across the league that are in worse shape than the Patriots' offensive line was this year. And they are figuring it out.
If you're
watching one in Cincinnati right now that's on its way to the divisional round.
You watched it in 2003 with the New England Patriots and Tom Ashworth and Russ Hochstein, and I don't know if it was Mike Compton at center back then. Who the hell played center for those teams?
Damian Woody?
He might have been in New York. Who was the center for the 2003 Patriots? Hochstein, Ashworth, Light.
Copen was 2003,
no, Copen
right?
was 05. Yeah,
no, he won a couple Super Bowls. He would have been 03, 04, I think.
Yeah, so Copen's in the middle.
Yeah.
Left guard, Light. Hochstein.
No, left tackle, Light.
Right.
Left guard, Neal? Or
yeah.
was he right guard?
No, he was, but he was hurt in 03, I think. No, that was 02 he was hurt. Anyway, I've gone to watch that team. Not really replete with offensive skill guys. They had Ben Watson and Daniel Graham at tight end. They had Troy Brown, Deion Branch, and David Gibbons at wide receiver. They put up 39. What the hell was it? Oh, my God, I can't believe it. 32 points in the Super Bowl against Carolina with a diabolical defensive line across from them. They got it done. So, Phil, you're right. Good offensive coordinators, i.e. Charlie Weiss being one, can figure out a way. Sorry.
That's not to say that they shouldn't be looking for a new offensive line coach necessarily.
Who would you suggest?
What's that?
Who would you suggest? I'm leading you down the primrose path.
Oh. I would suggest Doug Marrone if you can get Bill O'Brien to be your offensive coordinator. Those guys work together at Alabama. I believe they were roommates at Alabama. Their wives are really close
so
from
awesome.
the time that they were
because
roommates.
They're both like my age.
It's a
I would
great
have to have my
story.
own apartment.
It's a great story, and Mike Rodak wrote about it a year or two ago, I think, when they were both joining the Alabama staff. They hadn't worked together since they worked together for Georgia Tech back in 1999. So they finally get to reunite and work under Nick Saban, but their wives were roommates, I believe, at BC, and they've been friends for decades. So can their offensive styles and schemes marry up? I'm sure they could, Marrone and O'Brien. And I think those guys would work really, really well together. That, to me, is the second most important hire this offseason, Tom, is what are you doing with your offensive line coach? Because we know it's just such a hard position to coach. It might be the hardest after quarterback. And if Bill O'Brien's your quarterback's coach and OC, and if Doug Marrone is your offensive line coach, I think you've got two really well-respected, accomplished guys who would know how to install a system and know how to coach an offense and run the offense if they had to without any other help. I think right then and there you'd be good to go for next season and beyond.
Yeah. Now we get back to feelings and hiring friends and former players, et cetera. And Billy Yates is your offensive line coach right now. And Matt Patricia was supposed to be assistant offensive line coach, but as Phil pointed out early in the year, he was too busy with the other stuff. And Billy Yates was pulled down from the booth to the sideline, as Phil pointed out, and really took on the primary role. But Patricia was there as well. Does Bill say to Billy Yates, not good enough, I'm bringing in Doug Marrone? I mean, it is life in the big city, but it seems like guys don't get fired or reassigned or whatever. And where do you reassign Billy Yates? Work with Jake Bailey, punters? I mean, he's an offensive line guy.
What you could do is you could essentially keep some of the titles for some of these guys, right? Billy Yates' title all year was assistant offensive line coach. You could keep him in that role, and that way he's not being demoted, but you're bringing in a very experienced offensive line coach to help continue Billy Yates' development. He's still relatively new to the gig. The Patriots have had so many offensive line coaches cycle through here. It's hard to forget.
Good point.
They've had basically, if you include Billy Yates as the offensive line coach, because you're right, he essentially took over for Matt Patricia early in the regular season. They've had 5 offensive line coaches in the last 4 years between Dante Scarnecchia and Cole Popovich and Carmen Brasillo and Matt Patricia / Billy Yates. That's 5 names. It's wild. And so, can you get somebody to just come in and stabilize the thing? And I think that's what Doug Marrone would do. Matt Patricia, hey, you can shoot up to the front office and do essentially what you did last year. It's not really a demotion. We're just kind of taking you off the staff and we're putting you where we need you. And maybe it's an Ernie Adams type of role. I actually really think they could have used an Ernie Adams type of person this year.
Yeah, a perfect spot for him. I mean, I'm sure he's not having a hard time paying the electric bill. You're just not that great a coach. Smart as hell. Bill can keep saying you're a great coach all he wants. The guys love you, whether it's Mayo or Matt Chatham or in terms of, I got too much evidence otherwise that out on his own, running shit on his own, he's not getting the results that match up with the talent of the coach. So why is that? Whether it be in Detroit, where they went from a competent team under Jim Caldwell to the worst defensive team in the league under a defensive genius, whether it be the 2017 playoffs where Blake Bortles and Nick Foles tore the Patriots' new faces. It goes on. Enough on that. Phil, what's the why of the release the Patriots put out on Jerod Mayo?
Good question. So I think the why of the release, like the why you would make it public, is to sort of let the rest of the league know, hey, we're locking this guy up. Don't come around here with your $5 million a year offers for him to be a head coach. He wants to be here. We want him here. We're figuring something out. Okay. All right, guys. All right. Just back off. Okay. We know the guy's coveted, but we want him. Why do that in general, Tom? I think it's instructive for us to go back to Josh McDaniels and what happened with him in 2018, where he's become once again a coveted assistant, interviews, impresses, gets an offer and accepts the offer. And at the 11th hour, the Patriots swoop in and say, hey, we actually really like you. We'd like for you to stick around. How can we make this happen? How can we make this work? And McDaniels is sitting there saying, you guys are killing me. I mean, yeah, this is what I want. But could you not have done this a couple months ago before I went through this entire process? And now I have to go back on my word and tell the Colts and all those assistants that were going to Indy with me that I'm not coming. Boy, you put me in a tough spot here. I think they wanted to avoid that with Jerod Mayo. They knew they wanted him around. They knew what he might mean value-wise to the franchise down the line in the future. They know what he means to the franchise right now. They know he wants to be here. And so they make it enticing enough for him, Tom, to just entirely skip out on these interview opportunities that he's had. The Cleveland defensive coordinator job, the Panthers, reported head coaching interview that they offered him. So I get why they did it. And I think it was smart of them to do it, because if you get too far down the line, he may look at you and not have the same sort of decision that Josh McDaniels had pop into his head. He may say, hey guys, sorry, Carolina offered me the gig. I'm going to go take this thing. So I would say good on them for making sure that they sort of preempted that.
If the machinations that are going on behind the scene are leading to Jerod Mayo being named without being overtly named the successor to Bill Belichick, or the successor in waiting, or first in line to the throne, Bill Belichick has to look at that in a certain way. Which way is that? To me, initially, my feeling was, make him feel a little threatened, a little uncomfortable, a little irritated, might bother him. And then the more I reflected on it, Bill knows how old he is. Bill knows that he's not going to do this for an infinite period of time. And if Bill wants to see the legacy of what he built here in New England carry on after he's gone, rather than be replaced by, the Lincoln Riley du jour, then what better way than to have a guy that he drafted in 2008, made a captain in 2009, got Pro Bowl and all-pro level performance from, then saw that player leave, flourish in the business world, come back to the team, pay his dues as an assistant, and then as a de facto coordinator, and then succeed him? I think Bill would look at that as that's the fruit of my loins right there. It's the fruit of my coaching loins who is taking over. He is the living legacy to the genius of Bill Belichick.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, Tom. If Bill Belichick had his druthers, and he was told, and I don't think this would ever happen, but if he was told, hey, Bill, you go ahead and you pick your successor, I think option A probably would have been Matt Patricia, at least 12 months ago, right? He would have loved that idea. But I think option B would have been Jerod Mayo. right? Like in terms of
Yeah.
realistic options, outside of maybe one of his sons taking over someday, and that feels like a long way away. Realistically, for it to be Jerod, if that's how it ends up working out, I think he would take some pride in that. And I think he would know that here in New England, Jerod Mayo would in some ways be better set up for success than he would be with another organization, with an owner who might only be willing to give the guy a year or two, as so many owners are, if things didn't go well immediately. Here in Foxborough with the Crafts, who Mayo has a very close relationship with, he'll be given a legitimate opportunity to succeed and to continue something that's been built here for a long time. What have the Crafts told us for years, Tom? They have their other businesses and they like to hire the right people and let those right people run those businesses. And that's what they've done with Bill Belichick. If they want to be able to continue something in terms of the culture, the structure, the program, once Bill Belichick's gone, as opposed to completely ripping it up and starting fresh with somebody from the LA Rams, having somebody who's here in-house and learning the way a CEO would have somebody beneath him learning and in-house and getting ready to take on that CEO role when the CEO eventually retires in a Fortune 500 company, that would make a lot of sense, I think, for an ownership group that likes to treat their team like a business.
Yeah, your stock would not take a hit if the CEO who was succeeding had been there for 20 years or 15 years and had a good brand, which Matt Patricia doesn't. I mean, it would be impossible for the Kraft family to sell Matt Patricia to Patriots fans. It wouldn't be so hard to do it for a guy who the Patriots fans literally cheered for quite frequently. I wonder if Bill would jump upstairs to a football overlord position, advisor, or if that would be counterproductive because of the massive shadow he casts. I think that I know Parcells did it. I don't think it was negative for him to be ahead of Tony Sperano, RIP. Just remember that he passed away. He's a pretty amusing guy. But Parcells moved up top and it worked. Maybe Bill sees himself, or the Crafts see him, as somebody at a spry 71 who can still at 75, 76, 77 help.
I just am fascinated to find out eventually, whenever it does happen, whether or not he has the ability to step away. It's interesting to me. Ernie Adams, for instance, one of Bill Belichick's close friends and lifelong football guy. He's, as far as we know, kind of just taken off and gone, right? Vanished. We haven't seen him around the facility or anything. At least I haven't. Doesn't mean he's not there. But somebody like Ivan Fears, who's also retired, is still there all the time. And they're early and they're at practice. And that guy just loves it. And he doesn't want to be, I think it's just it's such a part of who he is that it's probably hard for him to pull himself away. Dante Scarnecchia, maybe he's more the Ernie Adams variety, although, Dante loves to talk ball, as he has on our podcasts and on our TV shows and on the radio occasionally. So he hasn't completely, maybe he's somewhere in between those two guys. Where would Bill fall in that spectrum? And I don't know. I really don't know, because I think part of him would just disappear, and then there's another part where maybe he can't even envision his life without this and the rhythms of the sport and how the year goes. I really don't. I guess if I had to bet on it, Tom, I would say that he would try to stick around in some capacity, especially with his sons on the staff, and maybe it's a way for him to just stay involved with them and the sport he loves.
I think Billy likes the buzz. Quiet as he might be, introverted as he might seem, I think he likes the buzz. I think he'd stick around. All right, we're not going to stick around any longer because we've been here for a while, and the Skull Crusher has to edit this thing. And I just had some snow slide off my roof and scare the absolute pus out of me.
You kept it together pretty well there.
Well, if you replay maybe about a minute ago, my eyes went. Okay, that's going to wrap it up. See you Thursday.
Bye.
Kind of limped into the end there, didn't we?